Hello everyone. Sorry, that was a while I reference over there. Sorry about that. Um, Assalamualaikum everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And the TCA library location, new place, new office, new setup. So all our books are now over here, as you can see. And for what it's worth, in order to appreciate something new, you need to first acknowledge the old, the place from where it originally came from, the place from where it originally started, and the roots from which it had developed into what it is today, right? And considering we're talking about the appreciation of the old in order to acknowledge the depths of the new, let's talk about the King's English. Now, this particular book that I have, again, it was owned by Sayyid Khatam Hussain Bukhari. I don't know the person. I've seen this name quite often in our collection over here. Many of our books over here are from that particular era in which he purchased them. But the King's English in and of itself is a very important book. Originally published in 1906, and then this is a 1940 reprint. But when we talk about, when you read through most of the old chronologies or the old annals and the old all the old literature, essentially right up till the Victorian era, up to technically the Edwardian era, just before the start of the Second World War, they tend to refer to the King's English. And it's not something to take lightly. This book is very, very important in the context of the development of the English language, at least as how we perceive it, because it provides an entire detail of how the system actually works. And sorry, jump cut, I guess. So we were talking about the King's English. Now, in the context of the King's English, in the context of this particular book, it provides an entire background, a very detailed introduction on not only on how to actually go about with the language itself, but it goes on in emphasizing that good English is about familiar words rather than far-fetched words, concrete expressions rather than abstract expressions, the avoidance of circumlocution, or as I like to call it, the Wes Anderson diatribe, because that's what it is. It's basically just prolonged running sentences which are essentially meant to say something simple, and it actually goes about why circumlocution is irrelevant, or rather not substantially useful when we talk about good grammar, good enunciation, good presentation, good writing, whatever the context may be. There are short and long words as well, when to use one or the other actually. It even goes about in how to go about that aspect. And you could tell that it is from an era when Americanism slowly started to creep into the world, especially considering they had achieved victory in the Second World War. So it has this complete chapter dedicated to Americanism. And this is a fascinating aspect. I always found it interesting in the 40s and in the 30s and 20s, and how they tended to, they being writers of the English language from the old country, from Britain. And this is irrespective of whether we're talking about the actual born and raised in Britain people or the colonies. Regardless, they tended to use Americanism to, I guess, berate the inferiority of their cousins, but that's just putting it mildly. I think it's a lot more nuanced than that. You can't just brush it aside as simple wet work. That, oh, because they are Americans, we can look down upon them. It doesn't work that way. And as he actually describes it, technically they are the Fowler brothers. They're technically, I need to emphasize this. It's H.W. and F.G. Fowler, the Fowler brothers. They were basically compilers of the concise Oxford Dictionary of Current English. And so they decided to write this book, which, as far as I've read, was the standard until Wren and Martin came over, until multiple revisions slowly and steadily arrived. And Wren and Martin is another book which I might make an individual review on. So, talking about Americanisms, as Fowler, the elder Fowler puts it, though we take these separately from foreign words, which will follow next, the distinction is purely pro forma. Americanisms are foreign words and should be so treated. To say this is not to insult the American language. If anyone were asked to give an Americanism without a moment's delay, he would be more likely than not to mention, I guess. Which is true. Like, it's very true. Like is another Americanism as well. We have co-opted it to refer to emphasis or to describe something in parable to. So it has a very metaphoric and idiomic context to it, whilst also being an emphatic exclamation. Inquiry into it would at once bear out the American contention that what we are often rude enough to call the vulgarisms are in fact good old English. I guess is a favorite expression of Chaucer's, and the sense he sometimes gives it is very finely distinguished from the regular Yankee use. But though it is good old English, it is not good new English. If we use the phrase parenthetically, that is like Chaucer and the Yankees, we have it not from Chaucer but from the Yankees, and with their, not his, exact shade of meaning. Again, it's true. Co-opting something in order to facilitate a cultural context. And it must be recognized that they and we, in parting some hundreds of years ago, started on slightly diverging roads in language long before we did so in politics. How prophetic this would turn out to be, right? And especially if you think about it, it's 2023 and this book was originally published in 1906, right? So this particular aspect had taken in mind the slow creeping influence of Americanism in politics and probably had become an important chapter somewhere in the 20s. So it is very prophetic in some of the ways that it describes American influence from an international capacity. In the details of divergence, they have sometimes had the better of us. Fall is better on the merits than autumn in every way. It is short, Saxon, like the other three season names, picturesque or picturesque. It reveals its derivation to everyone who uses it, not to the scholar only, like autumn. And we once had as good a right to it as the Americans, but we have chosen to let the right lapse, and to use the word now is no better than larceny. Oh, another thing about this particular King's English does not hold back its punches. It really believes that the fisticuff, as far as good proper English is concerned, can only be achieved if you are willing to uphold the standard. And the standard here mandates that you must be comfortable with your language. And it goes through every single aspect pertaining to the language itself. It is very particular about what should and should not be used, correct syntax, how do you use one or the other, to the point where you were like the other grammar books that came afterwards. This is the first. This is the original. This is, for all intents and purposes, the English standard that was accepted as standard before something of that sort had actually begun. And this is not something to take lightly. Recall from the earlier part of the video when I said that in order to appreciate the new, you need to acknowledge the old, and in order to be able to have a far-sighted view of the future, you must have a perceptive and humbling and modest appreciation of the past. You must acknowledge the past in order to progress to the future. You must always look at the future based on the past that you have. Your past experiences and your past contributions are what define how the future will present itself. And this is something that is important to emphasize. Renan Martin is something that I will talk about later onwards as far as these video series are concerned. And it's one of the many grammar books that we have here right now in this entire collection. This is not even the entire collection, by the way. If you look at some of our proper TCA reviews, the ones in which we properly have researched 10-15 minute discussions on a particular book with references and with guidelines, then you will recall that our library is quite extensive. And this only emphasizes the fact that Renan Martin and every other book that came afterwards derive their core context, their edicts, their standards, their grammar, their presentation, their gravitas, their ethos, their zeitgeist as well. All of them are derived from this book. This is a very important aspect, to the point where the King's English actually became a part of the lexicon as far as all these aspects are concerned, as far as the actual core presentation of English as a language is concerned. And it's important to emphasize that aspect when we talk about these grammar books, these discussions about the past and the past publications. Those are how we are able to have cultural and social preservation. Maybe in some future, after the channel has settled in and it has a substantial following and it has a significant number of subscribers who have liked the channel, who've subscribed to it, who've clicked the bell that links all bells together, I suppose, as far as subscribers are concerned. We might even consider making an audio books of this. We already have 2, so we might expand on it further. We might actually build on that aspect further in the context of content as far as this channel is concerned. And I guess to that end, it's a good place to conclude over here. It's a good place to at least say with a certain amount of pride that it is a strongly recommended book. This is a strongly recommended book. You don't need to buy it. It is available online. It has been preserved through various platforms. Archive.org has it, Google Books has it, and I believe several other websites have also uploaded it onto their platform, such that anyone who's interested in grammatical rules and overall context and how grammar evolved over time in the context of sensibilities, if they want to do that research, it's available. So definitely something to consider if you're interested in improving in improving your capacity to speak English well, to be posh, if you will, while at the same time actually having an edge as far as IELTS is concerned. Remember, this this is the core rule book. This is the standard from which English actually derives itself, and it's definitely something to take into account for future videos and for future works and such. So I thank all of you for not attending, virtually attending rather. Since as a subscriber you did agree to watch this entire video in full. So I thank you for your time, for your patience, for your perseverance, and for your attention, your undivided attention. And I wish you a good day. Also, I understand that there is a lot of background noise at the back. It's just a location aspect. We're literally walking distance from the main road in Westridge. So just something to consider. And I guess in future videos we'll work on this later. So thank you and take care.